So imagine you've got two people sitting in the front seat of a car, right? And they're driving down the highway. They are looking out the exact same windshield at the exact same road, but they're relying on two completely different GPS systems.
Right. And one GPS is just insisting, like, turn left, it's the only safe route, while the other one is flashing red, warning, turn right. Turning left leads straight off a cliff.
Exactly.
And they just start arguing, grabbing at the steering wheel, their heart rates are spiking. And the thing to realize is, the problem isn't that one of them is inherently a bad driver.
Right. The problem is they are looking at two fundamentally different maps of reality, and neither of them even realizes it. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled you are joining us. Today, our mission is to decode how you can navigate a world where everyone seems to disagree.
Yeah, which feels like everywhere right now.
Oh, totally. And we're going to learn how to do that not by, arguing better or finding the ultimate proof, but by fundamentally changing the mechanics of the conversation itself. We are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today. It's a collection of excerpts and articles from the Talent Whisperers series.
Yeah, and that series dives deep into communication dynamics, neuroscience, and human transformation.
It's great stuff.
It really is, because the material bridges the gap between high-level psychological theory and very practical everyday applications. It looks at how our brains process conflict, how we perceive reality, and what we can actually do to, well, hijack our default neurological responses when we encounter someone who sees the world differently.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core premise of today's deep dive is exploring a phenomenon the sources call curiosity reciprocity. Specifically, we want to look at how we can use two incredibly practical tools.
Active listening and powerful questions.
Yes, those two. How to use them to trigger this phenomenon. But before we get to the tools, we have to establish the playing field, which brings us right back to that car metaphor. The foundational concept here is what the sources call parallel universes.
Right, because we tend to walk through life assuming there is one single objective reality that we all inhabit.
Mm.
And if someone disagrees with us, they're simply failing to see the facts.
Like they're just being stubborn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the text argues that this is a total illusion. We each live in an internal construct, a highly customized universe shaped by our unique pasts, our memories, our traumas, our successes.
Our own personal maps.
Yeah, the sources call this our internal architecture.
It's like we are all walking around running completely different operating systems.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so of course the exact same line of code is going to produce a totally different result on your screen versus mine. I mean, a moment of silence in a meeting might feel like a safe space for reflection in my operating system.
But in yours, based on your past experiences, that exact same silence might register as a looming threat.
Exactly.
And if we accept that we are constantly operating in these different parallel universes, the entire goal of human interaction shifts.
It has to, right?
It does. It's no longer about proving who is objectively correct. It becomes about exploring why something feels undeniably true to someone else. And that leads us directly into the biology of what happens when these parallel universes inevitably collide.
Because they collide constantly. I mean, at work, at the dinner table, on the internet, and when they do, it's never just a neutral exchange of data.
No, not at all. The interaction usually falls into one of two self-reinforcing, highly contagious physiological loops.
And the first one is the defensiveness loop, right?
Yes, the defensiveness loop. And we often treat defensiveness like it's a character flaw. We label someone as stubborn or closed-minded, but the neuroscience shows us that defensiveness is actually a rapid state change in the body.
It's biological.
Pure biology. When a different perspective registers as a social or identity threat, your amygdala fires. It flags the incoming information as a biological danger.
So it's treating a differing opinion about, like, a project timeline exactly the same way it would treat a tiger jumping out of the bushes?
Literally the exact same way. The moment that threat is perceived, the hypothalamus activates the HPA axis, and suddenly your system is just flooded with cortisol and adrenaline.
Wow.
And what happens next is fascinating. Your attention narrows, your empathy drops. The regions of your prefrontal cortex associated with complex reasoning and perspective-taking literally become less available to you.
Because you're in survival mode.
Exactly. You are in survival mode.
And because human nervous systems are constantly reading each other's microsignals, your defensiveness is immediately mirrored back by the other person.
Right. It's contagious.
They sense your tightened jaw, your clipped tone or your crossed arms. Their threat level spikes in response, and the loop just reinforces itself. Defensiveness reliably invites more defensiveness. And the sources talk a lot about saboteurs in this context.
Yeah, and when the text mentions saboteurs, it's not talking about like a figurative demon on your shoulder whispering bad advice.
Right.
It's referring to the brain's highly developed predictive models. Our brains are prediction machines.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if you were constantly talked over or dismissed as a kid, your brain built a neural pathway, a saboteur, that perceives any interruption as an existential threat.
Oh, I see.
So when a colleague interrupts you in a meeting, your saboteur predicts danger, fires up that HPA axis we talked about, and launches you into that defensiveness loop before you're even consciously aware of
That is wild.
it.
But the sources contrast this with the second loop, which is the curiosity loop. And this is where curiosity reciprocity comes in because it changes the actual biology of the moment.
It really does.
When genuine curiosity is introduced into the interaction, those threat signals begin to soften.
Right, the chemistry changes.
Yeah, instead of cortisol, dopamine gets involved. And not as a reward for being right, but as a reward for discovery. And then oxytocin and serotonin start to build trust.
Which is huge.
It is. Your attention widens back out, and your brain regains access to nuance.
Yeah.
Basically, curiosity invites curiosity.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to stop here because, this sounds wonderful in theory.
Right.
But if my saboteur is firing because someone is aggressively attacking my idea, my brain's predictive model is screaming at me to defend myself.
Of course it is.
So how do I actually initiate this beautiful, calm curiosity loop when my nervous system is practically vibrating with the urge to fight or flee?
That is the big question. Because you're right, curiosity isn't just a mood you magically conjure up when you're under attack. You can't just tell an adrenaline-soaked nervous system to suddenly be curious.
Right. Hey, just relax. Never works.
Never works. It requires a deliberate mechanism to interrupt that defensive cycle. You have to manually override the autopilot. And the text points out that this mechanism begins with a very specific stance, which is active listening.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we hear active listening and we usually just roll our eyes.
Yeah, we think of seminars.
Right. We think it means performative nodding, saying, uh-huh, and aggressively maintaining eye contact like we learned in some, corporate HR training.
Oh, completely. But the sources trick away that fluff. They frame it not as a polite habit, but as a biological intervention.
A biological intervention?
Yes. It is the foundational stance of curiosity reciprocity. It's about creating what they call a felt presence of genuine interest.
A felt presence. I love that phrasing.
It's a disciplined internal practice. The mechanics outlined in the text involve receiving, appreciating, summarizing, and asking.
Okay, so breaking that down.
It requires you to pay full attention and intentionally withhold your own judgment. You aren't formulating your rebuttal while they are speaking.
Which is so hard to do.
It's incredibly hard. You are literally quieting your own predictive models. And critically, it involves creating silent moments.
Silence.
Yes. You have to allow the void to exist so the other person can fill it, rather than rushing in to defend your universe.
It's tuning into the unsaid. You are watching their saboteurs in real time.
Yeah.
If you see their pace speed up or they avoid eye contact, you are witnessing their internal predictive models getting activated.
Exactly. They're feeling threatened in their parallel universe.
And if you can notice that without judging it, you can adjust your presence to help them feel safe again.
And this brings us to a crucial concept the sources introduce, called API, assuming positive intent.
Assuming positive intent.
Yes. This is the cognitive engine of active listening. Assuming positive intent means you consciously decide that the other person's perspective, no matter how baffling or offensive it seems to your universe, is rooted in a valid, lived journey.
Let's talk about the neuroscience of assuming positive intent, because it's not just about being nice.
No, it's not.
When someone attacks your idea, your amygdala wants to label them as an enemy. But when you force yourself to assume positive intent, you are creating cognitive dissonance.
Right.
You are demanding that your prefrontal cortex step in and generate alternative narratives for their behavior. You are making your higher brain work harder, which actually starves the amygdala of the energy it needs to maintain that panic response.
That cognitive override is what fundamentally disarms the interaction. The sources note that this shift can turn even harsh criticism into a gift.
A gift.
A gift. It becomes a chance to learn about the architecture of their universe rather than an attack that you have to defend your universe against.
It's like a conversational martial art. It's less like blocking a punch and more like debugging software.
Oh, debugging software. Tell me more about that.
Well, instead of screaming at the computer because the program crashed, active listening is opening the developer console to see exactly which line of code triggered the error. You are looking at the raw data of their experience without taking the crash personally.
Opening the developer console is the perfect way to look at it. You are stabilizing the physiological environment. You're signaling to their nervous system that they don't need to fight.
Right.
But once active listening has established that baseline of safety, we can't just stay there processing data silently.
Yeah, we have to actually do something with it.
Exactly. We need a way to actively guide their parallel universe into view so we can both look at the code together. We need to explore the map they're using. And that is done through the second mechanism.
Powerful question.
Powerful questions.
I found the section on this incredibly revealing. Powerful questions are not interrogations.
No.
They aren't traps you set to prove the other person is a hypocrite. The sources explicitly warn against performative curiosity.
Performative curiosity is the worst.
It really is. That's when you use questions as a sneaky conversational tactic to steer someone toward the conclusion you wanted all along.
And people's nervous systems detect that manipulation instantly.
Instantly. And the defensiveness loop slams right back into place.
Yeah, a powerful question shifts the interaction from static, defensive positions to unfolding paths. It moves the conversation from a debate about facts to an exploration of meaning. The goal is to illuminate the underlying assumptions that are driving the disagreement.
The shift from what to how is the key here. The text gives fantastic examples of this. Genuine curiosity sounds like an exploration of the how rather than a judgment of the what.
Right.
Instead of saying, that's completely wrong, which just attacks their reality, you ask, how did you come to see it that way? Or what experiences shaped that view?
Yeah.
You were basically asking for a tour of their operating system.
And the sources outline a specific, highly effective method for this called the 5 hows.
The 5 hows.
Yes. It's a framework for gently tracing how certainty is formed in someone's mind. The questions are designed to deconstruct a belief without attacking the believer.
So what are the questions?
You ask things like, how do you know that? How is that knowledge formed? From whose perspective? What other perspectives might exist? When you ask these questions with genuine, non-judgmental interest, it invites deep reflection.
Let's actually visualize this for you listening. Imagine you are in a tense workplace meeting, right?
Oh, we've all been there.
Yep. You are discussing a new product launch, and a colleague slams their hand on the table and says, this timeline is completely impossible. It's going to be a total disaster.
Okay, the defensiveness loop kicks in.
Right. Your saboteur says, they're calling me incompetent. So you reply, no, it won't. The metrics are solid. You just aren't managing your team's time well.
Boom, cortisol spikes. Everyone is in the defensiveness loop.
Exactly. Now let's rewind and apply the 5 hows. Your colleague says, this timeline is impossible, it's a disaster. Instead of defending the timeline, you open the developer console. You ask the first how. How do you know the timeline is impossible?
And the colleague might say, because every time we launch a product in Q3, the supply chain bottlenecks.
Okay, so you ask the second how. How is that knowledge formed for you?
And they reply, well, 2 years ago, I had to work 80-hour weeks in September because the vendors missed their deadlines.
See? Notice what's happening.
We are moving away from a fight over the current timeline and into the architecture of their parallel universe. They are operating on a map where Q3 equals personal burnout.
Then you can ask the third how. From whose perspective are we looking at the current vendor contracts? You see where this goes. You are gently guiding them to examine their own rep. You replace the need for certainty with the thrill of exploration.
And the text highlights a brilliant real-world example of this in a 5th grade history classroom.
Oh, I loved this part.
It's so good. Instead of just handing the students a textbook and giving them one static historical narrative to memorize, the teacher asked them how they knew what they knew. Then the teacher had them look at history from the perspective of the Aztecs, the Incas, and the conquistadors. The goal wasn't to replace one correct story with another correct story. The goal was to demonstrate how perspective fundamentally shapes understanding.
But wait, I have to ask a question that I know people are thinking about right now.
Sure.
If I'm the manager in that meeting and someone is totally demonstrably wrong about the project timeline because they're just ignoring new data,
Okay.
Aren't I just validating bad work if I start acting curious instead of correcting them? Like, doesn't asking, how did you come to that conclusion, legitimize a flawed conclusion?
That is a critical distinction to make. Understanding a perspective is mapping the territory.
Mm.
Endorsing a mistake is building a house on a swamp.
Okay, map the territory, don't build on the swamp.
Exactly. You are not validating the bad work. You are validating the process by which they arrived at their conclusion, so you can locate exactly where the error occurred.
I see.
By exploring their parallel universe, you can say, ah, I see. You're using the supply chain data from 2024. Let's look at how the 2026 data changes that map. You corrupt the data without attacking their identity.
That makes perfect sense. It separates the person from the problem. And this ties into another crucial nuance the sources bring up about how curiosity reciprocity operates in the real world. We have to talk about power dynamics and the asymmetry of risk.
Yes, because curiosity reciprocity does not exist in a vacuum.
No.
It is deeply affected by status, authority, and perceived safety. A manager asking a subordinate, how did you come to that conclusion, feels very different than a subordinate asking a manager the exact same thing.
Oh, completely.
From a lower power position, expressing curiosity, asking probing questions, or admitting uncertainty can feel incredibly dangerous. It can feel like exposing your flank to a predator.
So if I'm the one in charge, if I'm the department head, the lead teacher, or even the parent in a family dynamic,
Right.
it's actually on me to absorb that initial risk. Like, I can't just demand that my team suddenly be open and vulnerable. I have to be the one to deploy active listening and powerful questions first, repeatedly, to make it safe for them.
Exactly. The sources describe leaders as the thermostat for the group's emotional climate.
The thermostat.
Yeah, in asymmetric relationships, reciprocity doesn't begin with mutual risk. It begins with the person who holds the power, choosing to absorb the risk. When a leader responds to a dissenting view with genuine curiosity rather than an immediate defensive correction, they are modeling a way of being.
They are effectively hijacking the natural defensiveness loop of the entire organization.
Yes. They are showing that difference is a feature, not a bug. They are signaling your parallel universe is welcome here, even if we ultimately decide to take a different route.
And over time, that creates a culture where learning accelerates. Conflict is no longer something to be avoided. It becomes usable, creative friction rather than destructive office politics.
Which is what every organization wants, right?
Exactly. So what does this all mean? Let's bring this all together for you. We live in a world that feels increasingly fractured. Certainty is weaponized, and every disagreement, whether it's over a marketing campaign or a Thanksgiving dinner conversation, feels like a battle for survival.
It really does.
But by consciously employing active listening as a biological intervention and using powerful questions to map someone else's reality, you have the ability to hijack that natural defensiveness loop.
And the best part is, you don't have to surrender your own boundaries. You don't have to agree with things you find fundamentally incorrect or flawed.
Because understanding does not require agreement.
Exactly. Understanding does not require agreement.
By leading with curiosity, you change the physiological conditions of the conversation. You metabolize differences in your workplace, you diffuse arguments before they spiral, and you expand your own perception of the world simply by asking to see someone else's code.
And the beauty of finding that road together is that it doesn't just solve today's problem. The sources talk about this fascinating idea of relational memory.
Relational memory. I want to make sure we got to this.
Yes, we so often think of tools like active listening and the 5 hows as immediate tactical fixes. We think of them as ways to resolve a specific conflict right here, right now, so we can get back to work.
Just putting out the fire.
Exactly. But the text asks us to look at the long horizon. Over time, when the same people encounter disagreement again and again, partners, executive teams, families,
Right.
the posture you take doesn't just reset to 0 after the argument is over. It accumulates. It leaves a residue.
A residue, yeah.
Every single time you choose the curiosity loop over the defensiveness loop, you're building the relationship's memory. You're creating an unspoken biological expectation about what will happen the next time a disagreement arises.
Enduring relationships don't actually eliminate differences. They simply build the capacity to revisit those differences again and again without collapsing.
So every powerful question you ask today, every time you actively listen and assume positive intent instead of snapping back, you are quietly teaching the other person's nervous system that it will be safe to disagree with you tomorrow. You are inviting a future where curiosity remains possible.
That is an incredibly powerful way to look at human connection. Think back to those two people in the car fighting over the steering wheel because the GPS systems are telling them different things.
Right.
You can't force them to use your map. But if you can stop yelling, lean over and say, "Show me what you're seeing on your screen. How did your system calculate that route?" You might just realize that the cliff they are warning you about is real in their world.
And by looking at both screens together, you can finally map out the road home.
Thank you for exploring with us today. Keep asking those powerful questions, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.